morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning. My name is Mary McKenna. I'm a serial technology entrepreneur and angel investor. And I am joined here this morning by Professor Mark Ferguson, who is the former Director General of Science Foundation Ireland, former advisor to the Irish state in terms of scientific matters, and he's also the chairman of the European Innovation Council. So, Mark, it's an absolute pleasure to see you here in Donegal this morning. You're very, very welcome.
Thank you.
And we only have 20 minutes, so we're going to just jump straight in here with questions, because I've actually got probably like 2 days worth of questions for Mark, so I'm going to try and keep it down to 20 minutes. So, Chairman of the EIC, would you mind just telling the audience here today a little bit about what the European Innovation Council is,
Sure.
what it does, how we can access it, and whether there's actually anything there for people from the Northern Ireland and the UK in a post-Brexit world?
Great. Okay, so the European Innovation Council is a new instrument from the European Commission. And in simple terms, if you compare Europe to either United States or China, we're pretty good at the science. If you look at any metrics, those three blocks are about the same. We're pretty good at startups. So if you look at the number of startups that are formed in China, Europe, and the US, it's about the same. But if you look at scale-ups, in other words, companies that grow, then we are nowhere near as good as the United States. So in order to address that, there are kind of a number of issues, one of which is finance, which I'll speak about, another is connection, and so on. So on finance, the European Innovation Council has a fund of just over 10 billion, with a B, euros, and that is in 3 simple programs. The first is called Pathfinder, which is really like the United States DARPA. It's about technology challenges that are set, that teams compete with, that are managed by programs, and it involves consortia of universities and companies. The second is Transition, which is what it says on the tin, 2.5 million euros to transition your innovative idea from academia or from wherever into a standalone company. And then the main part of the EIC is the Accelerator Program, which is for small companies, for startups, for small companies that are formed in the deep tech sector. So what is deep tech? IT, healthcare, climate change, anything that's to do with deep technology. It's not about hairdressing and butcher shops, it's about deep technology. And under the Accelerator Program, a company can get 2.5 million euros in a grant and up to 30 million euros in equity funding. So our aim is to crowd in private investors. So we aim for 5 to 1. It's currently 3 to 1. So every euro that the EIC puts in, we're looking for 3 to 5 euros from the private sector. It's about taking a high risk, not a stupid risk. So it's about investing early. We will be the first investor if necessary. We will never price the round. We will do that by venture debt, and then that will convert with the private investors into the equity investment. And we're about trying to crowd in other investors. We want to work in partnership with everybody, with state agencies, with national agencies, with organizations you heard about in the previous panel, with private companies, all the rest of it. It's about crowding things in. And then finally, it's also about connecting. So there are corporate days with major corporations, there are investor days, and so on. So this is for European companies. You asked me about Northern Ireland and the UK. So at the moment, the UK is not associated formally with the European programs, and therefore none of them are available. That is going to be solved at some point in the future. It's in the middle of a political negotiation. When it is, as currently structured, the UK have decided they do not want to be part of the equity investment. So they do not want the UK, do not want the equity piece of the EIC. That's because it's administered through the European Investment Bank, which in turn is subject to the European Court of Justice, which the UK does not want to sign up to. So when they associate with Horizon Europe, the grant part will be available, but not the equity part. Unless, of course, that changes. I think it would be in everybody's best interest if it did, but that's a higher level of politics.
So I'm going to translate that into layman's language for everybody in the room. That is 2.5 million euro for a small or medium-sized enterprise, which is free money, no equity. That is a grant that is pumped into your innovative business to kickstart you and get you out of the starting blocks. So every single person in this room who's a member of an EU state should be looking at the EIC page on the website and applying immediately, because there's another round coming up in a couple of months. So, Mark, I work on the jury, as you're aware, and many of the innovations that I see coming through are to do with health tech and med tech. Maybe 70% of what we fund in the EU are those types of innovations. I'd like to ask you about how you've seen those sort of bleeding edge innovations trickle down for the benefits of citizens across the EU, and maybe talk a little bit about how it benefits society.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the EIC was in a pilot phase for 3 years. In that time, we have created 10 companies that are now worth more than $1 billion, 150 companies that are worth more than 100 million, and a whole pile of others. So if you look at those investments, about a third of them are in healthcare, as you said, about a third of them are in digital, and about a third of them are in climate. And if you look at some of those, I can give you examples. For example, in the healthcare area, people looking at new heart valves. If you look at the climate change technologies that we see here with some of the innovators about carbon capture and storage, about ways of utilizing CO2 as a catalyst. If you're asking me for things that I think you'll see coming in the next few years, then I think a new kid on the block will be dual-use technology. The war in Ukraine has actually highlighted the importance of dual-use technology, not just for citizens, but also for the military. Let me give you an example. A French company that the EIC has invested in is using solar-powered drones. So if you think about this, in theory, you can make a drone that flies forever. If you put a solar panel on it and you have battery and it's recharging the battery from the sun, it can theoretically fly forever. That's a real technical challenge. It's to do with the weight of the panels and the weight of the battery and all that kind of stuff and what the payload is. That is of massive importance in terms of geo-surveying, of deliveries and so on. But it's also got military significance. And so why do I say this? In the last year, NATO has created a new innovation hub and a brand new innovation fund, several billion euros, really focusing on this dual use and indeed on other military technologies. So I think you'll see that come to the fore. You will definitely see come to the fore green technologies of all sorts. That's really important. You'll see health stuff come forward. You'll see digital stuff come forward. There's massive, massive opportunity. I mean, one of the great things is the EIC gets about 5,000 applications a month. The success rate is very low. It's of low percentage, and that's because there are such high numbers of applications. But the quality is very good, and a new innovation is that if you are deemed to be fundable, but above, or I beg your pardon, below the threshold of which we have funding, then the country can use structural funds to directly invest in the company without breaching state aid rules. That's something that took me 3 years to get through the Commission, that you can make a single investment without breaching state aid rules. So there's a huge push to try and get innovation in Europe, to try and get scale up in Europe. And at the back end of that, France, Germany, and a lot of other European countries are coming together with a scale-up fund that will be 100 billion in a scale-up fund to make later-stage big-ticket investments of the sort that you see in the United States to really scale these companies. So Europe is serious. It has fantastic companies. It has fantastic innovation. It's got fantastic opportunities in regions like this. Completely blank page in a lot of new areas like climate change. And we are serious about making this happen.
Thank you. And I'm going to just take things back a little bit more to maybe something that people in the room can relate to. If there's anybody here today or joining us online who fancies a career in innovation, what tips would you give them, Mark? Like, what are the building blocks? And maybe perhaps talk about some of the less trodden paths that you could come in through, not academic, other things?
Very good. So, I mean, I think there are 2 or 3 things to say. First of all, there is an assumption that an awful lot of these innovations come out of academia. Actually, they don't. So less than 50% come from academia. Many of them come from people who've worked in another company and have got an idea. Many of them are increasingly coming just from entrepreneurs who are thinking about things on their own. So we have to be very broad-minded. I mean, I always say, if you're looking at agri-tech, agricultural investment, you know, farmers are a real good source of innovation in agri-tech, but they're not people who've necessarily come through a university, nor are they necessarily looking for a new company, but they're often wanting to show off to their neighbor or make a bob or two more in terms of what they do in the agriculture. So we've got to be very broad and embracing. You asked me for a couple of tips. Resilience is really important. Lots of people are going to tell you lots of reasons why you can't succeed or why your idea is silly. You've got to have the foresight to take on board the really important feedback you're getting, but you also have to be able to dismiss stuff from what are essentially people who don't want to see change. So resilience is important. Sense of humor is really important. Like, you've got to be able to get on with people. You've got to be able to look at it. If you're an innovator, I've always said to people, do as much homework on your investors as they do on you. It's really important. You're going to be in bed with these people for a long time, so you've got to make sure you can get on with them, that you share the same values and so on. Those would be 2 or 3 tips.
That's the best piece of advice that you'll hear all day, actually, is do your due diligence on your investors. Don't just listen to what they say to you. And my last question for Mark this morning, as we wrap up here, is the European budget has been set now for the next 7 years, so we kind of know what we're doing for the next 7 years. What happens after that?
Very good. So there's a consultative process that takes place about halfway through. It'll be next year where the programs are reviewed. Our aim is to grow even more for innovation, to show the success, actually, of investment. I mean, this is a very bold move for the European Commission. It's the first time in its history that it's taken equity. So we are now the single largest investor in Europe. We are making more investments than any investment company. We make 100 investments a month. That's pretty damn good. And it's really, really important that we show the success. So I told you we've built companies of value. It's also really important we take a high risk. So I've set a metric that says we have to have a number of companies that fail. Because if that's not the case, we're not taking a high enough risk. So I think it's really important that we stimulate this. I think it's really important going forward that we invest more, that we encourage others to do it. My ultimate aim is that the European Innovation Council will make itself redundant, because Europe will be so attractive to the private sector that it will not be necessary to catalyze it with public money. And we're a bit away from that at the moment, but that's the aim. The aim is to make us so attractive that people want to invest, because these things are going to do good for the planet. They're going to improve people's health. They're going to improve the way they live. They're going to create employment, and they're going to make money. Now, what better combination is there for that? Making money, doing good for the planet, helping people, providing employment. I mean, that's what the innovation of the future is about, and Europe is serious about doing it.
So, thank you. You've heard it from the horse's mouths this morning. I'm going to repeat that. It's €2.5 million of free money into your business to kickstart your innovations. Mark and I are here. Come and talk to us. We can't wait to see your applications coming in. So, thank you, everybody.
Thanks very much.